From Moscow, we have received a comprehensive newsreel coverage of the fighting along the 1,000-mile front, which stretches from Leningrad to the immortal city of Stalingrad. We start in the northern sector, around the besieged city, which for over 15 months has withstood every assault. Across a shell-torn battle area there comes a runner with an order to smash certain German fortifications. The commander's headquarters is located in a train. In a compartment crowded with maps sit Red Army officers ready at a moment's notice to bring a concentrated fire from an armored train to bear on the enemy. The position indicated in the order is plotted and studied in relation to their present location. Soon the mobile unit is underway to join up with some naval guns in shore emplacements. The Leningrad defenders have sprung many a surprise on the Germans by this means. Control of the railway line is essential for such unexpected bombardments. And when they break out, the people in Leningrad hear the rumble of the guns and know that another attack is being launched. This is all that remains of the German point of resistance after the firing has ceased. Soviet troops scour the shattered enemy fortifications in search of prisoners, looking for survivors who may be hiding in trenches or dugouts, peering for those who befoul their country. The only Nazis to set foot in Leningrad. A sluggish stream of dejected Germans winding through the city they were sent to conquer. There are many in this world who would give much to do the same thing. We travel down now to the Kalinin and Central fronts, centering our attention around the Rzhev-Vyazma sector. It was here that the Russian High Command, in a special communique over Moscow radio, announced that Soviet forces had passed over to the offensive. A full-scale operation which employed tank-borne shock troops and massed artillery. A furious assault which broke upon the Nazis and swiftly endangered the German positions. The battle-axe nation arose in newfound might, flinging tremendous weight in a vast, multiple-thrust plan of penetration. Thousands of shells streamed through the night. By the light of gun flashes, cameras photographed Soviet artillery in action. Tanks laden with automatic riflemen press on as the tidal wave rolls forward to exploit a breakthrough. "I cannot get away from destiny," said Adolf Hitler recently. "It haunts me day and night." How painfully true must he have found that remark to be, when instead of digging in until the spring, his divisions are confronted with the prospect of a winter more terrible than the last. His intuition must have boggled at the sight of his armies in Russia, confronted with a series of offensives, any one of which may seriously threaten his entire campaign. Here on the Central Front alone, the Red Army divisions are biting deeper and deeper into the German lines. General Zhukov was responsible for the brilliant operation. In the wake of the advancing Russians, there came those who had been driven from their homes, eager to return to what may remain. Slowly, grimly, painfully wending their way to try and pick up the threads of life in the now liberated villages. Here are but a few of the 600 inhabited localities from which the Germans were driven in the first few days of the offensive. Gorodishka begins to live again. Its inhabitants have been living in the woods. Kamenovo suffered a terrible ordeal. Fiercely does the determination to exact a terrible vengeance on the Nazis burn in the hearts of every citizen in the Union. No Red Army man will be content until the Soviet forces break across the western frontiers of Germany itself. This was once a thriving town at the source of the Volga, where hideous atrocities were perpetrated by the Germans. Evidence of their occupation. And evidence of their exit 45,000 Germans were killed around here alone. Captured booty ran into big figures. On every section of the front, huge quantities of equipment began to pile up. Here are men guilty of some of the suffering in that vulgar town. The third point in our travel south brings us to Voronezh. Here the lunge of war is marked by intense air combats. Dogfights between Russian, German and Italian fighters filling the sky. These fierce engagements had the effect of drawing Axis aircraft away from the Stalingrad front. The principal aim of the Voronezh offensive was to relieve the pressure on Stalingrad. Here again, it was a 4-point drive, preceded by intense artillery fire, followed by armored penetrations into the vulnerable spots. These Hungarians deserted and crossed over to the Russian lines. The closing account of Russia's multiple breakthrough brings us to the war-torn battlefields southwest of Stalingrad. After months of unceasing warfare, the heroic defenders were at last relieved. The troops under General Chaikov, who was responsible for repelling the main German assault, had fought the greatest battle of the war. 100 German divisions had during that time been flung against them, but they held. They had whipped the cream of the scum. At long last, the great Timoshenko drive had come. Fresh troops swept into the attack, and battered Stalingrad breathed again. A little party of wounded Russians coming out of the line for the first time are given refreshment by a 60-year-old woman and her granddaughter. A touch of sentiment in a scene which feeds upon little else but the cruel, remorseless reality of war. German cries for urgent help come from many places along the Russian front. It is Hitler's turn now to try and stem the tide.